Thanks for staying tuned to WION. We begin first up with statements coming in from President Donald Trump, who has congratulated after the announcement of ceasefire. He says, "Congratulations to everyone. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire in approximately 6 hours from now, when Israel and Iran have wound down and completed their in-progress final missions for 12 hours, at which point this war will be considered ended." So that's the statement on your screens that's been put out by President Donald Trump. He says officially Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, it is going to be Israel that will start the ceasefire, and that would bring an end to the war. He goes on to say that after each ceasefire, the other side will remain peaceful and respectful on the assumption that everything works as it should, which it will. I would like to congratulate both countries. So, statement coming in from President Donald Trump, who has said that ceasefire has been agreed upon between Israel and Iran, and that for 12 hours, Iran will start, after 12 hours, Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, Israel will start the ceasefire. That would bring an end to the 12-day war, which will be saluted by the world. And joining us live on the broadcast from California is Stephen Golub, who's joining us as I said, from California. Mr. Golub, your first response, fast-paced developments, of course, but what can we expect in the next 6 to 7 hours, given that situation remains volatile, not just in Tehran, but also in Israel?
Well, fast-paced indeed. You know, if you were to interview me an hour from now, the headline could well be different the way this story is evolving. In the next 6 or 7 hours, yes, it's very possible, although Israel and Iran have not yet confirmed this, it's very possible there will be a real ceasefire in place. But I have to take a bigger look at this, or to take a look at the bigger picture, really, I have two very ironic words for you. Mission accomplished, which are the words that George W. Bush used back in 2003, 6 weeks after invading Iraq and deposing Saddam Hussein, claiming great success in that campaign, aiming to build a democratic Iraq that would be stable and not a problem for its neighbors. Well, over the longer run, that certainly failed. Looking at the U.S. record in Afghanistan as well, back at that time, we had deposed the Taliban. Now, who's back in power in Afghanistan? The Taliban. So the ceasefire is in and of a good thing. And in fact, I'd even say bombing Iraq's nuclear facilities was a good thing, not just for Israel, not just for the U.S., but for the world. I don't think India has enough on its hands, with China on one side and Pakistan on the other, to have a very rabid fundamentalist regime in power in Iran with a nuclear bomb. Would not be in India's interest. It's not even in the interest of Russia, right. Iran's ally. So let's see what happens next, most notably whether Iran commits to allowing rigorous inspections to determine whether it's really its nuclear facilities have been destroyed, whether it's not going to rebuild them, and what's become of the nearly 10 bombs worth of nuclear grade, or nearly bomb grade, I should say, materials it had assembled.
Yes, Mr. Golub, reports also suggest that it's Qatar that has helped broker the ceasefire between Israel and Iran. However, we are still awaiting that official word from both the sides. But in your view, how challenging do you think it would have been to help broker that ceasefire between the two sides?
Well, given the circumstances, I think it may be in both sides' interest to have a ceasefire. They've been bombarding each other. Maybe Israel would want to continue, but Israel's taken some hits along the way. So it could be in both sides' interest. And, you know, when we have a ceasefire, that can go in all sorts of directions. If you're the Iranians, yes, maybe you simply want an end to hostilities, but if you're the Iranian leadership, you may say, okay, let's get a ceasefire. Israel will no longer be attacking us. We'll have a breather now. We can begin to reassemble our military, begin to look at how we can work around the limits put on us to maybe still go ahead and build a bomb using the nuclear materials we may well have available. So it may be not have been that hard to broker the ceasefire under the circumstances, but the really big question is what happens next. And the really big issue here again is Iran really agreeing to step back, or is it just a temporary ploy, especially on its part, to try to delay and obfuscate matters so that it can build a bomb, not necessarily tomorrow or next month, but in a year or two, or even, who knows, buy one from North Korea.
Right, Mr. Golub, that's exactly the point I was coming to. There is still a lot of ambiguity over where that 400 kg of enriched uranium is. In fact, United Nations nuclear watchdog says that it still does not know about its whereabouts. J.D. Vance earlier in an interview to ABC had said that US would work in the coming weeks to do something about the fuel and would have conversations with the Iranians. Your thoughts on where possibly that 400 kg of enriched uranium could be?
That's a good question. It could be separated in different places around the country. You know, there are reports that there were trucks near the nuclear facilities shortly before, in the days before the U.S. attacked these three nuclear sites. And frankly, that may, and if Iran did move these nuclear materials, we may need to hold Donald Trump responsible for that, because instead of playing it quietly and not threatening and blustering the way he did, he made it sound like an attack might be imminent, not definite, but might be, which from the Iranians' point of view, provided them with all the information they needed to say, let's spirit these nuclear materials to different secret sites all around the country. If I could add one more piece of context here, where we are now is really behind where we were a decade ago. The U.S. administration, with other countries, including Russia, signing on, agreed with Iran that it would limit its development of nuclear materials, that they would be carefully inspected so that they could only be used for peaceful purposes. They would not become nearly bomb grade the way they are now. Donald Trump came in 2018 and abrogated that agreement, so that we're in worse shape now than we would have been if he'd simply had honored that agreement. And the world is in kind of an unstable state, and the region is in an unstable state as a result. So credit to the Trump administration for going after these facilities, given what a horrible regime Iran is. It supports terrorism. It's horrible to its own people. It's very destabilizing. But let's not get too carried away with the praise, because Trump helped create the very circumstances that these bombings are meant to correct.
Yes, Mr. Golub, stay with us. We have a statement that's coming in from the White House. White House press secretary, who's just put out a statement. She says, President Trump has accomplished what no other president in history could ever imagine: the obliteration of the Iranian regime's nuclear program and an unprecedented ceasefire between Israel and Iran. Mr. Golub, this statement being read, talk to us about whether there is a possibility of Iran and US now coming to the negotiating table when it comes to its nuclear program.
Yes, I think that would be, it's unstated there, but I think that would be an absolute requirement. Otherwise, Iran could just reconstitute the program, use these materials that may still be out there somewhere, and build a bomb within, or bombs within the foreseeable future. But to get to that statement itself, he said it had obliterated Iran's capacity. Trump's own military generals have said, no, we don't know yet. And there's really no way of knowing unless you have a very, very in-depth review of satellite photos and maybe people on the ground, actual inspectors, to know whether it's been obliterated. So this is really, frankly, more eye-rolling bluster from President Trump to overstate his accomplishments in ways that really are misleading to the public and the world.
Yes, Mr. Golub, an alarming statement that came in from the Speaker of Iran's parliament earlier. He said that the country is still mulling to suspend its cooperation with the United Nations nuclear watchdog. If that happens, given that radiation levels are still being monitored at these nuclear sites that were targeted, what do you see here on if that is Iran does decide to suspend its cooperation with the United Nations nuclear watchdog?
Well, if it suspends the cooperation, then we could be looking at more bombing and fighting within the next 24 hours or 48 hours or whatever. I think the whole point of these attacks were to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. The only way of really knowing whether it's being prevented from taking the steps to develop nuclear weapons is to have some very rigorous, comprehensive, on-the-ground inspections, including, and in addition, a vow by Iran that it absolutely is not doing that and that it's limiting its nuclear use of nuclear development to peaceful purposes. Or perhaps even under these circumstances, there could be a demand from the US and Israel and even the world that, no, simply stop developing nuclear technology at all because you haven't been trustworthy in the way you have tried to use it. So unless it continues to abide by an agreement to allow inspections, or really allows them to restart, then a lot of this could just be a lot of hot air about a ceasefire, and certainly about obliterating its capacities. Again, we just don't know yet whether its nuclear capacities and nuclear materials have been obliterated at all.
Also, Mr. Golub, if you can talk to us about the Strait of Hormuz, there's obviously a lot that's been floated in the last few days that Iran is possibly going to shut down Strait of Hormuz. Has that threat been completely eliminated, given that there is a ceasefire that's been agreed upon?
Oh, by no means has that threat been eliminated. For two reasons. One is that unless very quickly Iran agrees to nuclear inspections and rigorous nuclear inspections, and that could go all over the country and may hopefully detect where these 10 bombs worth of nuclear materials or near bomb grade nuclear materials are, then this whole ceasefire could be very, very short. So that's one factor. Another thing to take into account is if you're Iran and if you really don't want to make that agreement, you'd still agree to the ceasefire temporarily, try to string the US and Israel and the world community along until you can refortify your military, until maybe you can secretly build a bomb or buy a bomb. And part of what it might do in the meantime or along the way is to help support terrorist attacks, maybe mine the Straits of Hormuz, take all sorts of other steps once it feels that it's back on its feet to some extent, to cause all sorts of problems. Now, when would that be? That could be maybe a week, but more likely further down the line. But the Straits of Hormuz, are by no means necessarily secure for all sorts of reasons.
Yes, point taken, Mr. Golub. And also, if you can quickly talk to us about Iran striking the military base of the US. Do you think that this was more of a face-saver move on part of Iran, given that there's obviously no injuries or casualties reported, and also the fact that apparently same number of missiles were fired by Iran as by the US as it targeted those nuclear sites in Iran?
Oh, certainly. And I believe there was a report that it even gave the U.S. some advance notice of what it was going to do. So, yes, this is a face-saving move. So it could say to its own people, look, we struck back against the enemy. Now we're ready to have a ceasefire and to move forward. Whether Trump will take it that way, I suspect he will, because he's accomplished in a very limited, to a certain extent now, what he wanted to with these attacks, whether he's accomplished eliminating the Iran nuclear. But yeah, this is a face-saving move, and it wouldn't surprise if Iran took this move, or in combination with this move, sent some kind of note or secret communication to Trump, praising him, buttering him up. I would imagine Vladimir Putin had said to Iran's leaders, I believe he might have met with the foreign minister very recently, look, play to this guy's ego. Tell him you respect him. Tell him you're not going to overstep your bounds. Tell him you really have been intimidated or are respectful of the force that he's shown, and you could prevent him from going overboard again in terms of any military response. Playing to Donald Trump's ego is a part of the calculation of what Iran is probably doing right now.
All right, Mr. Stephen Golub, we'll have to leave it at that. Appreciate you joining us on the broadcast here at WION.
Good to be here. Thank you.